Country at Work. I'm Ralph D. Meachus, and today I'm here with George Weber, a very talented speaker who does a variety of characters. And what's most fascinating to me is the way in which he has created his business here in wine country out of the fabric of our history. It's really quite remarkable. So welcome, George.
Thank you, Ralph. Happy to be here.
Yes. What's interesting, George, is that we've been friends a number of years, so we know each other as people. And
well, I suppose so, yes.
Not as the characters or personas, as myself as tour guide, and you as originally Mark Twain.
I forget who I am.
And then General Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo. And then the Count.
Yeah.
Three very important people in terms of how we view this area.
I suppose so. I thank you for that.
It's remarkable. In fact, I was thinking about that. It's really time for you to write a book about this.
From someone who's published 85 books, I understand perfectly your point.
You tell the living history of this area very well.
Thank you.
Your knowledge of the material is quite unique. And I think people would love to read it. People love stories, and you're quite a storyteller.
Stories. Napa has many stories.
Right. Now, why did you start with Mark Twain?
Well, I started with General Vallejo.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah.
Actually, I started with Professor Vine in 2000.
Oh, okay.
Professor Vine was my first character, and I started Professor Vine because the wine industry, in my opinion, made a mistake by making wine tasting an upper-class experience. And so Professor Vine uses flip charts to tell wine in a straightforward fashion. You may remember Professor Irwin Corey.
Yes.
It's Professor Irwin Corey doing wine.
Ah.
Flip charts, mortarboard hat, scholastic robe.
I do remember this now.
Lovely, lovely, wonderful success. He was very popular in the 1950s and 60s.
Yes. Well, I remember you doing that. I remember you as Dr. Vine. That
Professor
was
Professor Vine. And then I added Luigi, the singing Italian chef.
Right, I remember that one.
And then General Vallejo began in 2003.
Ah. That's interesting because the other day I went along with you on your tour, camera in hand, and your knowledge of the Bear Flag Rebellion really blew me away, I have to tell you, because I thought I knew something about this subject, and it turns out I don't.
It's a complicated story.
It's much more complex and multi-layered than I thought. I thought it was fairly straightforward, but there were a lot of very interesting players.
Straightforward has never been from the beginning. Just what were these men doing? Of the 33, of course, 13 came from Napa.
Right, exactly.
So the Bear Flag Revolt and Napa are intimately intertwined. Nathan Coombs, who founded the city of Napa in 1847, he was a Bear Flagger.
Right. Of the various people within the Bear Flag Rebellion, who do you find most fascinating?
Robert Semple is the most interesting character. He was a 6'8" tall man. He was the tallest man in California in 1846. He was both a dentist and a lawyer, and he was the one who basically convinced the other Bear Flaggers that killing the general and his brother Salvador, of whom Salvador School in Napa is named after, would be a very bad idea.
Interesting.
So it is the dramatic arc of the reenactment that I wrote 10 years ago and performed June 14th, coming next year,
Yes.
On the actual day of the Bear Flag Revolt in the Sonoma Town Plaza, right across the hill there. And he was the one who really was the good cop as opposed to the other bad cops. And he was the one who really saved the general's life that day.
Well, he was an educated man.
Yeah.
And he had a huge presence, obviously, though how he was a dentist with hands that were obviously that big is kind of remarkable.
Interesting point. Yes.
I guess muscular.
They might have been, he was very thin. He weighed about 140 pounds. He was 6 feet 8 inches tall. He was like a stalk.
Long fingers.
He was long. He was a perfect pianist.
Exactly. Interesting. You know, it's funny, it's a character I'd never heard of. You had mentioned him the other day on the tour. I'd never heard of him.
And William Ide was the president of the putative California Republic for 25 days, and he was a teetotaler, as was Robert Semple. So the story of the Bear Flaggers getting drunk is actually not entirely true.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I do know, I had read not too long ago that one of the biggest wine producers in Northern California was General Vallejo.
Making wine as early as 1839,
Right?
commercially.
Yeah. Where normally when I think of early winemaking in California, I think of your current character, the Count.
The Count. Dr. Victor Faure was a Frenchman making wine for the General by the 1850s. Nicholas Carragher was the first American to make wine in the Sonoma Valley. Carragher Road
Yes.
is where his estate still is. So the Count Augustin Horsty, founder of Buena Vista Winery, not the first winemaker, but the one who brought European techniques to California, and thus is rightfully known as the father of California viniculture.
The fascinating character, my wife Lonnie's family, part of her family is from Hungary.
Ah, that explains why she is so beautiful, sir.
Yes, yes. And so when we talk about the Tokages and she talks about the Count, when we first came here, she felt an immediate relationship to Buena Vista.
Yes.
And then when we would visit, you could tell that the place was not being given the attention it deserved based upon its history, being a fan of history. And when the current owner, Jean Charles, took it over, his focus on that brought you into the mix in an unexpected way. That
Yes, I was brought back to life. Now you see I'm speaking with a Hungarian accent.
Yes.
It's quite surprising, really.
It's a wonderful addition to the history of this place. I mean, today you hop on an airplane, you fly to Budapest in 12 hours. How long would it take in his time? What kind of courage did it require to go halfway around the world to California? It's a mystical land. You know, he did travel with an entourage, true, but still.
Well, the Count first settled in Wisconsin in 1841, came to California in 1849 with the gold rush, started the winery in 1857. Took a long time to get around.
Right. Remember, a huge amount of effort.
Boats, trains.
A huge amount of effort and a lot of courage, because if you think about it today, you know, how quickly everything happens. Well, winemaking by its very nature is a long process.
Ooh, this is true.
A patient process.
Yes.
You know, and just clearing for the vineyards with, the strength of men's backs, a lot of Chinese backs, was just a grueling process. It took a man of just tremendous vision to think that this was a good idea at all.
On behalf of the Count, I thank you.
What first got you going in the idea that this kind of work would be a good idea?
Well, yes. The jury's still somewhat out on that. I am a historian. I've always loved history. And I'm an actor. And the original idea was that I could take acting and history and create art. And my conceit was, and still remains to some extent, that if I created art at this level, that eventually commerce would move its way up to the art.
Yes.
That was the idea,
Yes.
which I've explained to my wife many times since then.
Yes. And of course, the coincidence.
And my in-laws, too.
Yes. Yes. They always want a good explanation.
Well, they're interested in how you're making a living.
Yes. Supporting their darling
Yes.
daughter. Yes. Yes. But you also had to build this during, the biggest major recession we had since the Great Depression.
I remember. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Well, it didn't work. There have been times it didn't work particularly well.
No, it was challenging times for many people.
True. But I have taken a great deal of pleasure and comfort from my favorite saying by Winston Churchill, which is that the key to success is moving from failure to failure with enthusiasm.
Ah, yes. How true. How
Just
true.
keep moving and changing.
Yes.
Eventually,
Yeah, exactly.
If you are hardworking and industrious and have an idea, this is the experiential economy. We are all in the experience business.
That's
It's
true.
amazing how many wineries haven't figured this out,
Right.
but some have. And so wineries now increasingly offer wonderful experiences. And what my walking tour is a college history class on Napa's history disguised as a walking tour.
Mm.
I go for the intellectual travelers and the locals who want to learn more about their amazing town.
Mm.
Many people send their uncles to the tour when they want to get them out of the house.
Yes.
You have to go, here you go, here's his
I was
tours at 9:30.
I was really amazed during the tour of downtown Napa, which I think is, a commercial town. I was really quite amazed by the historical significance of the place.
Napa was the second American-founded city in California. Only Benicia is before Napa. And it was in 1847 when Nathan Coombs purchased land from Nicholas Higuera, laid the streets out in January of 1848. To know that just a couple weeks later, gold would be discovered. And so Nathan Coombs, the luckiest person in Napa's history.
It's all in the timing.
All in the timing, yes. And his timing was very good.
The fact that the first branch bank in America was established in Napa, that was quite a revelation.
In the world.
In the world. That was invented, and the first one came here.
Yes, Wells Fargo Bank on Main Street and between 1st and 2nd Avenue. It is the first branch bank in the world, founded by A.P. Giannini in 1923. And it was the Bank of Italy, became Bank of America in 1927. But he invented the concept of branch banking. So this beautiful classic revival architectural building, 6 massive columns in front, reminiscent of a Greek temple,
Right.
built in 1923, 35-foot high ceilings, a remarkable architectural edifice, thankfully still remaining on Main Street.
See, that when we're talking about the experience, that was what was so interesting about the tour. It was the depth of knowledge and the way in which you present it while we were looking at the bank, looking through the windows and seeing the chandeliers that were hung back in the 1920s.
Haven't been, they've been ever since. They've been there hanging there for a very long time.
That kind of cohesive experience of a story, an image, and being in the place has tremendous retention.
You're correct. There's just no way to redo it. And even in a car going too fast, bicycles too fast. Segways are a lovely endeavor, but it's walking.
Yeah.
Walking.
Yeah.
That is when the magic happens.
Right.
And ideally, my tours are like you're in a bus looking out, but walking. And eventually, you forget you're walking, and you're just walking through the neighborhoods, and you even forget. That's the beautiful part of walking, and why so many people love to walk.
I think that if more people who worked in the wineries took your tours, besides giving them a sense of how significant Napa has been to our history in many complex ways, it would make them bump up their hospitality experience a couple of notches.
I completely agree.
Because I'm a huge believer in that. It's the winery experience. It's the wine country experience. In fact, I've written multiple books on this, and we do smartphone apps. And in our smartphone apps, we rate the wineries, but not on the wine. Because there's lots of people who write about wine. So the last thing we need is another person writing about wine, because whenever I write about wine, people get mad at me. So I like to avoid that.
They do.
They get mad at me, yes. We don't like to talk about
Well,
that.
you can't give everyone a 95-point
I
score.
I have opinions, strong opinions. But we rate them on the winery experience, on the hospitality experience.
Makes sense.
And some places are very good at it, and some places seem to be clueless. But what people remember when they go to a winery are the stories. They want people to talk with them. They want people to give them a context about, how did this place evolve? Because none of them evolve quickly. There's no quick making wineries.
Wine sales in general is dropping names.
Right.
Oh, our winemaker is this. This is our vineyard. And it's just name dropping.
That's true.
Yeah, all we do is drop names.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Well,
hopefully you have some names that people know that they can drop.
Right, or at least sound good.
Yes.
It sounds good because
And the point score, the whole point score, that's point dropping.
Yeah, it's true.
You know?
Well, it's funny when we look in our apps, for instance, and we determine which pages people go to most. And the pages that people go to most have to do with the ease of remembering the name. Because they remember it from a wine list someplace. They remember it from, on the store shelf. Like, for instance, the most visited page in our app, besides after, like, how to use the app, is cake bread. How can you forget cake bread once you've had it in a restaurant? Cake bread.
Pretty delicious, too, so they got that going for
Right,
them.
it's a very good wine. It's a really nice tasting experience.
Nice.
But it's not the most visited winery in the valley. The most visited, actually, the three most visited are Satui, Visatui, Beringer, and Sterling are the three most visited.
More than Mondavi?
Oh, yeah. Mondavi's in the top 10, but cake bread's actually quite a ways down there. But it's the wine people have on restaurant lists. And they see it, and they have it in a restaurant with a group of friends, and they remember the name, and so when they come out, where do they want to visit? They want to visit cake bread. What's interesting is that you get sent all over the country to introduce people to Buena Vista wines. Lots of people go around the country and do that. But when the Count arrives, I mean, this is on a whole other level, Count. I mean,
Yes, they love the Count in the South.
oh,
In Chicago, they like the Count, but they want to know what the deal is.
oh, well.
Only place that is not crazy about the Count in general is New Jersey.
Really?
Yeah, people in New Jersey, they're not excited about anything.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry to people out there in TV land from New Jersey. Forget about it.
Yeah, it's a generally suspicious lot.
I guess so.
Being born in New Jersey, I do know about this, so.
Ah, well, you made it out.
Yes, yeah, so I do understand. But it's fascinating to me that it's just a great type of presentation. I mean, when you meet someone, you go through this as a speaker. You reach a point where everyone starts looking familiar, don't you? After you see a certain number of faces in life, everyone looks kind of like someone else you know. There's a tendency for that to happen. Maybe it doesn't happen to you.
Interesting.
It happens to me. I've been in retail and manufacturing. I've been in running businesses since I'm 16 years old. So I get to the point where everyone looks kind of familiar to me. But when you meet the Count, it's not going to look like anybody else in your daily experience.
Few people wear Victorian clothing on a daily basis.
And you use a speech pattern.
In the year 2013.
You use a speech pattern that comes from another era. That's what's interesting.
Well, my accent comes and goes. It is the darndest thing.
Right.
I forget who the heck I am. Sometimes I'll just drift into the Count.
Yes, I can understand that.
I will tell you a story.
Yes.
Last Christmas, they were taking some pictures, and my lovely wife, after Christmas was over, showed me a picture of myself with her family in a group photo. She said, "This is not you. This is the Count. Can't you be you at least in the holidays?" And I go, Who am I? They go, "George, could you just be George?" I go, "I'll try." And then I tried to do the George, but I don't. I am not sure who the face is. You see, it just you see, just it is hard for me to stop being the Count.
I understand that.
But when I'm out on the road being the Count for Buena Vista Winery, as my friend Kate Kennedy said, "Good gig, George." She said. After a while, they want to talk about me.
Right.
They go, "So where were you born?" "Pest." "No, you. Where were you born?" I go, "Not the Count?" Yes, not the Count. "Where were you born?" I go, "Well, Des Moines, Iowa." I don't really want to talk about George.
Right.
It actually requires more endeavor.
Right.
The Count does all the work by himself.
As a tour guide, I do wine tours. I have certain things I say in certain places. Now, it's spread over 2 big counties, so I have a lot of things I say.
Sure.
But when I get into that area and I see that spot, it's that reel turns on, starts running. And the next thing I know, it's just coming out of my mouth and the expressions in the hands. And it
Because you have discerned the perfect thing to say at the perfect place.
Right.
And that is what tour operators do.
Right.
We create perfect verbiage. There isn't better verbiage.
Right.
There's only so many words.
Right.
When you've done it for hundreds of times, you get it down to every word is perfectly chiseled. So I tend to say the same things every time.
Exactly.
Which is why when they have a question, I'm so happy.
Yes.
A question. Oh, thank you. I get to say some new words now
Yes. It is
about
nice.
something that I haven't said thousands of times.
Right. It's also very interesting because we're both professional speakers. I had spoken on stage for many years. That it takes a certain personality to be comfortable doing that. They say something like 90% of people are afraid of public speaking.
That is what they say.
Right. There's a small number of us apparently are not, you know.
I guess so.
But there's also a major shift that goes on when you go from being on a stage, which you do as well, to larger groups, to being around the people, right? Toe-to-toe practically with them in an interaction. It's a whole other shift that takes place.
It's true. When I have a small number of people taking my tour, I have to literally make myself smaller. Because if I do it, present myself in a large way, I can burn their eyeballs right out of their. They'll burst into flames. It's too intense.
Right.
So really, the number of people I want is 30 people.
Right.
I want 30 people behind me, walking, listening to me, because at that point, then it's not so intense for a person.
Right.
If there's just 4 or 5 or 6, I will literally not look at them in the eye. I'll look away. I'll just actually ration my viewings of them. But we become skilled at this when you have enough people, there's someone falling asleep, which is always disconcerting for the speaker.
Yes.
Even as dramatic as you can be, someone is falling asleep. So I literally go, don't look over there. So I'll look over there, I'll look there, I'll look there. I don't want to look there because it can throw you off.
Yes.
If someone's actually like this,
Yes.
which I've seen more times than I want to
Every speaker
recount.
does.
It can you go, oh my. It's the head back part. That's what really gets me. Is like, how could you be asleep like this?
It's a talent they have.
It's always been surprising.
It's remarkable. Another thing that's interesting is that your walking tours, because I assume when you're at the winery you're still outside, is you're walking unamplified to the outside. There's no walls bouncing the sound in.
No walls. No, I am a professional lecturer. Yes, I have a trained voice. I learned how to sing at the age of 5 in choirs, and so I learned how to use the diaphragmatic breathing and projection. So I've never lost my voice.
Yes.
Yeah, well.
It's quite a talent. It's a talent that is less common these days.
It is. Too bad. I would have to say that this is to some degree, they're used to have performing arts in schools. They don't much anymore. No, they can't afford it anymore. This is a tragedy.
But it's also was interesting to me the other day that not only were you speaking and staying in character and going on about the history, but you were also the crossing guard.
Yes, you don't want one of your guests to be run over by a car. That would be bad.
I especially appreciated it because I was carrying a camera. So I was looking at the camera all the time, and I would see George's arm go up and say, "Nope, go this way."
It's called the science of human movement.
It was very
You're moving people around.
graceful.
You want people stand here, not look into the sun. So I position someone here, so I'm the one looking into the sun, not them.
Thank you so much for coming, George.
Thank you, and thank you, Napa Valley TV and Napa Valley at Work.
Napa Valley at Work.
Very good. Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you. So thanks for joining us for this episode of Wine Country at Work, and we'll see you next time.